SpectreVision Radio. SpectreVision Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall, and I'm a folklore researcher. Hello everybody and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast, and I'm delighted to have with me this time Bryn, Chainey, writer and director of Rabbit Trap, a film that's just about to release in the US next Friday, so 12th of September. Welcome, Bryn. How are you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me. That was a really lovely, calm intro. That sets that sets a really nice energy for the podcast. I've got an association of podcasts of like, "Hi, welcome to the show, Wing Bang Boom." So it's nice to come somewhere where we can settle in and have a calm, uh, insightful conversation.
Was it
I'm new to this. I'm new to this whole thing, obviously. So
yeah, I'm just thinking, was that a bit British? Not sure that was.
as it should be. Why not? I'm British. You're British. Let's do it British.
She need to introduce some pizzazz. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's great to have you on. I have just watched your film over the last week. I've watched it twice, and I absolutely loved it. I really loved it. And the reason we're
Thanks.
talking about it here on this podcast is because it very much both reaches into the other world, and you follow the journey of the reaching out from the other world to us. And the film is completely chock full of folkloric motifs, and anybody that's been following, the kinds of experiences we've been looking at on this podcast and the folklore we look at will recognize all of this in your film. So, can you tell us a little bit about the film to begin with? And we're not going to go into any spoilers today, of course,
Okay.
but how it came about in the first place.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. To give your listeners just a broad understanding of what the film is, it's a story about a pair of musicians. It's the movie set in Britain in the mid 70s, and it's about they work with field recordings as well as created analog electronica. Um, they have recently relocated to the Welsh countryside um, for undisclosed reasons, and one of their characters are called Daphne and Darcy. And Darcy, one of his jobs is to collect sounds in nature for his wife to incorporate into her music. Um, he's someone that's wrestling with some internal demons at the beginning of the film. That's not a spoiler. We see that he's suffering from strange visions at night. He's suffering from sleep paralysis, which seems to be pointing to something in his unconscious that is um, bubbling to the surface or trying to get out, and he's desperately trying to push it down. That's the state of mind he's in as he goes into the woods to collect sounds of his wife. And when he's deep in the woods, he hears through his microphone a strange signal. It's music-like, but possibly a strange garbled language that's coming through the static and the waves, and he follows it deeper into the woods until he encounters a fairy circle, and he follows it all the way inside the fairy circle. And probably your listeners know that's a bad idea. Don't ever step inside
Yeah.
the fairy circle. Yeah. And from there, the encounters with the other side. How did you put it? Like the other side is reaching out.
Well, yeah,
Um,
I mean the other world kind of reaching through, you have these places where either we can stumble into their world or, they stumble into ours or
yeah,
intentionally enter into ours,
yeah,
potentially. And of course
yeah,
we can intentionally attempt at least to enter into theirs. So yeah, there are these
yeah,
such as the fairy.
yeah, yeah. And so this character, the main character, he unintentionally, I think, stumbles across a way in or an access point. And yeah, so from there, fairy forces or under, yeah, I mean, I think it's not going to be a shock to anyone who listens to this podcast when they watch the film that these are fairy forces, um, infiltrate this couple's lives, uh, in increasingly psychedelic ways that leads them on an emotional, psychological journey of destruction and healing all at once. Yeah, so in some ways it's a horror film, and in some mostly I think it's a love story that incorporates elements of fairy tale and folklore and myth. Um, is that kind of I don't know if that's enough. You've watched it twice. How would you describe the film?
As you're talking about it, I'm just kind of led back to the film. I'm really led back to the film. I'm thinking about, I was kind of really agreeing with internally around the destruction and healing and how that works together. Because, if you've listened to some of the actual experiences that people have with these worlds,
Mm,
they can come in very unnerving packages. They can be experienced at these kind of profound levels, profoundly at deep levels within ourselves that really shake us to the core. And
mhm,
yet, afterwards, as a result of those, we are changed and healing can take place. Healing isn't always, a beautiful kind of lullaby experience at all. In my experience,
mm,
it's more regularly you kind of suffer in some way and you come out the other side a better
yeah.
person for it. And you really captured that, and it all the way through I was wondering, yeah, what inspired you, what because I've seen your previous film as well, so
Mhm.
um
For
Maury,
short films, this is my first feature, but yeah, I appreciate that you dug in and found one of my short films. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
no, it's really cool, and I've actually shared it with my Patreon group because I knew they would really love
Oh,
it.
cool. Oh,
So
thanks.
that is
Cool.
Moritz and the Woodwows.
Yeah.
Of course, the Woodwows sparked my interest.
Mm.
They're usually connected with, the wild men.
Yes.
And these have been documented throughout history. In fact, the one of the most famous, the Wild Man of Orford, was documented by Ralph Coggeshall, who we know also brought us the Green Children of Woolpit, so which is something else
Right.
we've spoken about on the show.
Love that story. Yeah.
Oh, it's really amazing, really interesting story that I don't know. I always hope that we might find out more about that somehow some manuscript might turn up at some point to tell us what happened
Yeah.
to those two children. But so the Woodwows really led me in, and
Mm.
I wasn't disappointed when, you see this being, uh,
Mm.
and
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, it was important for us to. Ultimately, it was a low budget short film. I made it while I was living in Germany, and yeah, we couldn't show it for practical reasons as well. But it was that's also a film about going into the going into the woods metaphorically and physically, and then nature dragging you even deeper, dragging you under the soil where actually the real death and rebirth happens.
yeah,
Like again, literally and metaphorically. I mean, this is the theme of most of my films, I think, to do with um, disintegration and then kind of regrowth.
yeah, and
And
reintegration, I guess, reintegration in a new way into the
yeah,
realm.
and hopefully reintegration with the natural world, or the films I've made are generally about characters who feel disconnected to their social environment for various reasons, and are struggling with finding a place, a sense of connection with the world beyond beyond the internal. And then nature is what drags them into a place of connection, you know? So by the end of their journey, they find a sense of place and home through nature. And I would count supernatural or like preternatural or folkloric forces as part of nature. This is the way that my films look and feel is hopefully very grounded in naturalism.
Mm.
And I mean that in a kind of a nature-based kind of naturalism.
We've
Um,
got a friend that's just going to
we
validate
have.
that.
Who's this? This
This is
beautiful
for,
void.
aren't you? The First Lady of Fluff. Um, so yeah, I mean, I want to park something for a moment because I really want to come back in a
Yeah,
moment and speak to you
sure.
about the fact that you know, you use 35 millimeter film to create the
On Rabbit Trap. Yeah, true.
on Rabbit Trap, sorry, I should say on Rabbit Trap for the feature film.
Mm,
So I want to park that in a moment because the visual is really the visuals are really something. I mean, and the spaciousness to me, it just it was such a pleasure to watch because of the spaciousness of the film, which is
mm,
something that you don't always get. It's always, you know, like you said at the beginning, wham, bam, and you know, there's it's
mm,
just so fast moving. You don't get a chance to actually breathe and get a sense of the experience within the film. And so what I found with Rabbit Trap was that it really allowed you to do that. And I also just want to respond to, you know, seeing the being in Morris and the Woodwoes. I believe you kind of did see the being in a much more, it kind of felt like a more realistic way than if you had some kind of CGI character leap out and that be there in the forest.
yeah.
Actually, I thought it was brilliantly done. It left me wondering how you managed to do that. I don't know
Oh,
how
thanks.
you do that, but I really liked it. So that is a kind of something that people that are into this are more likely to get that
Right.
than they would something kind of CGI. But anyway, ultimately, I really wanted to ask you, you know, what's inspired you? So
Oh,
I'm
sure. Yeah.
around kind of nature, but whether there was anything else and whether, you know, you had any of your own experiences that inspired
Mm.
you.
Big question. One that I'm still trying to figure out the answer to. I mean, I do think I do count make the process of making a film for me is a bit of an attempt to solve the mystery of why I'm drawn to make that film.
Mhm.
That makes sense. Um, so, but I can answer the question. Rabbit Trap, in a way, actually started as an extension of Moritz and the Woodwoes, which is the short film you sent to your Patreon subscribers. And it was a continuation of those themes that I felt I wasn't done with personally. Like I do start with the psychological. I start with a journey that I feel I need to go on as a writer. And then finding a character that can be kind of my proxy for that, or that can do that journey into the woods with me. Um, and so I actually do start with a lot of journaling to myself and asking, okay, so where are you at? What's scaring you right now? What are you not wanting to look at? Um, and trying to answer that question to myself. And since I was a kid, it's just been very natural for me to build narratives around symbolic forces and supernatural encounters,
Mhm.
even though I don't think I've had any concrete supernatural experiences. I'm really very interested and open in people in the experiences of those who have. And I think I've come close and I've got a long, complicated history with the supernatural that would take up maybe too much time. But um, it's just always felt very natural to me. And I think that comes from my childhood, is that I, I mean, I'm half Welsh, half English, and I was a very I was a very introverted child, and I had some health problems as a kid and some kind of emotional things I didn't know how to deal with. And from a young age, from a very young age, I had night terrors and very vivid hallucinations that would last for hours. And I would see creatures of all different kinds, like giants and kind of demons and things in it. And that, and so I would, the most intense emotional experiences of my childhood, or some of the most, were encounters with beings that I had not invited into my room,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that that did a number on me.
Mm.
And you tie that with my father introduced me to the work of Brian Froud when I was a kid, and Brian Froud remains a huge influence on me. Not just his illustrations about fairies, but the way that his books about fairies treated them like an encyclopedia.
Mm.
Just, oh, these are pixies, and this is how they act. Deal with it. Oh, these are trolls. They get annoyed by this. Move on, and they weren't treated as anything other than fact.
Mm.
Um, not that much information to go on. So if you encounter one, good luck. That was the overall feeling I get from Brian Froud's, like kind of his books about fairies and so on. And as a kid, I read them at a very interesting time, a pivotal time where the boundary between the imagination and empirical truth wasn't fully formed. And I think that's a really exciting age for a kid. And the things, kind of media or experiences that you you encounter at that time go in deep. And for me, it was the the intense hallucinations because of overheating and night terrors mixed with loving to sit with my dad and go through Brian Froud books, and also the fact that I grew up in England, but half my family is Welsh, and we would do these trips over to Wales and go through the woods, and um, I was also there was always this idea of a place that my family was from, but I'm not from, and it created this Wales of the mind, maybe that
Mm.
that I think birthed a longing in me for a place, like the Welsh have this word for it, hiraeth,
Mm.
which is like nostalgia for a place that you haven't even been or that may not ever exist. I think that was put in me young. And I think a lot of my films are actually born out of these early experiences.
That's really beautiful, and I totally resonate with that. Similar experience with kind of going over to Ireland as a child and building the sense of Ireland. Because my dad's Irish, and actually my mum's
Mm,
parents were Irish as well from Northern Ireland, but growing up in Jersey, and yeah, it beds deep, doesn't it?
mhm,
That's really beautiful, particularly the sense of going through the forest, and you really feel that with this film. There are plenty of trips into the forest, physical trips into the forest in the film. It makes
mm,
me wonder also, what was the opening for your father around these worlds? I don't know, and
mm,
don't need to, you don't need to talk about that if you prefer
mm.
not to, but how open was he to Otherworld? It sounds like he was pretty open to be showing you.
Yeah, that whole side of my dad's side of the family, um, are they are yeah, they're quite spiritual people in various ways. And definitely he would talk about fairies and supernatural forces as real potentialities in life. They weren't treated as a silly superstition. It was um, probably just a part of what it was to be a person.
Yeah.
And my mother is more of a kind of Church of England Christian,
Mhm.
and that also probably helped because I grew up with two parents who both took the supernatural as natural, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that was really helpful for me as well. I mean, now my relationship to the supernatural is um, one of great curiosity and openness. Um, but in terms of the work that I do, I'm more I'm more approaching it from a kind of a folklore and
Hmm.
kind of symbolism side of things, or ways to dig into the unconscious. Um, not not to suggest that I think all nature, spirits, and things are just metaphors. I think it's actually much richer than that. I think it's more mysterious and um, entangled with the internal life of the person and the external kind of other realms, you know. I
Mm.
don't know, I just basically haven't got a concrete answer for any of it other than I'm interested in finding the connections between
Yeah.
things,
It-
internal, external, this world, other world, material, spiritual.
This, yeah, I mean, this is what we find most meaningful as well, then, with this project is that exploring this and, in your film, you do that and allow others to kind of lean into that as well. It's in the exploring and the finding meaning in that that actually starts to open up rather than kind of chasing down concrete answers. We're never going to find that. That's not what the other world, the other realms are about. Uh,
Mm,
in the film they come into contact with this being, or this person,
mm,
and things start to unfold. And you know, from the very beginning, they are, I guess, a bit lost in nature themselves. They've gone to this house. It's in the middle of nowhere. It was actually, so it's set in Wales as
yeah.
your film, but it was filmed in North Yorkshire, I believe.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Originally, I wanted to shoot everything in Wales with Welsh crew and do that, but for some financial reasons, it wasn't possible to shoot in Wales. And there's a there's a very particular strange law in Wales that so all across the UK, it's illegal to smoke in any workplace, including vaping, including herbal cigarettes. But there's special dispensation given to theatres and film sets because
Yeah.
characters need to smoke, and that's true all over the UK except in Wales.
Oh, amazing.
So actors aren't allowed to even smoke herbal cigarettes on set. And my two characters are chain smokers, and there's a lot of pot smoking in the film. So the option I was given was if you want to shoot in Wales, we have to do CG smoke.
Uh,
Um, and number one, we couldn't afford CG smoke, and two, that would look rubbish.
yeah.
Um, and it would go against kind of the spirit of the film, which is to do things organically and analog. Um, and anyway, it proved unfortunately too expensive to shoot in Wales. So we went up to Yorkshire and it worked out beautifully, actually. The landscapes up there are so varied and rich. And we shot in some places that have never been filmed before. We
Yeah.
had great access to kind of the environments that I needed.
Mm.
So yeah, so it's a stand-in for Wales. But anyone who's traveled around Yorkshire can probably spot it and go, "Ah, okay, that's Skipton." You know, it looks like Wuthering Heights because we shot it down the road from Emily Bronte's house, you know?
Goodness me. Because there's
Mm.
one scene where it's just this kind of stony landscape. Uh,
Yeah, it's limestone, this kind of limestone pavement, it's like an ocean of rock, right? Which
yeah.
has been dried up. Yeah.
Oh, it's really incredible. And because of the shots and the fact that you've used 35 millimeter, and because the shots are lingering, as I say, you really kind of get sucked into the story. So you're there with the characters when they come across, this being that then
Mm.
they kind of strike up some kind of communication with. So I asked you before we began, did anything strange happen on set? Because I was just wondering, kind of, whenever I tend to talk to people about, when we get heavily into Otherworld, often we start getting technological issues. Um,
Mm.
Particularly when we're talking about Gwyn up Gwyn up Neath, or the Dark Man, anything around that, we start to get real difficult. I shouldn't have mentioned his name, actually. He'd probably get some kind of issue now with the technology. But um and I know you said that nothing kind of strange happened on set aside from that, rabbits kept turning up in
Yeah, everywhere.
the way through.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. When we were driving around in Yorkshire looking for the house, there was a very particular kind of house we needed to find, which had to be an old farmhouse, which was basically derelict because we needed to completely gut and renovate. So we needed to find a place that would allow us to do that, and also was had access so we could get vans. It was a bunch of things that were had to come into alignment. and it was really getting close to the shoot, and we still hadn't found the house. And then the house we ended up shooting in, we drove up through very long dirt road, and we parked at the end of the driveway, and then sitting way down the driveway was this small dog just staring at us as we got in the car. And my designer Lucy said, "Bryn, look, there's a dog just staring at us." And we turned, and this dog was just staring. And then it turned, and we realized that's not a dog, that's a bloody great hare. And it was just waiting for us. And as soon as we got out of the car, it ran off. It's just one lone hare in the driveway. And that turned out to be the perfect house, like that was the one. Um,
Wow. Okay. Well,
yeah,
if that's not a sign, I don't know what is. And
sure.
that's fantastic. Love that. Where
Yeah.
else did they turn up?
Well, it ended up in the house where my DP and my cinematographer and assistant director we holed up in for a few weeks during pre-production to go through the schedule that happened to have kind of a hill, and there was just rabbits all the way up, and then they would come down under the house. We'd sit out there with wine and looking at the sunset, and there were these rabbits hopping around. Um, so there, and then um, post-production was meant to entirely happen in the UK, but for a few different reasons, we ended up shifting part of the post-production to America. And so I went to LA for the first time, and I ended up staying in this very nice lady's pool house. I needed somewhere cheap where I could live while we're editing. And she had this kind of quite nice kind of wooden pool house up in Altadena. Um, and yeah, and I wouldn't have thought in LA I'd be living somewhere where there were rabbits running around under where I live, but they were. And I would sit out on the balcony sometimes and just watch rabbits run around. And that was a great experience. And that place is now gone. Altadena entirely burnt down earlier this year.
Oh, right.
So that house has been there since the 60s. Um,
Oh,
so it
just
was there just for a few months while I mean, as in I was there for a few months, and then I sort of packed up and left, and then it was all gone. And I really hope that my first thought when I read about that was, shit, I hope the rabbits got out
Mm.
because the humans will get evacuated, but I don't know if rabbits and bears and coyotes do, but
I know that was one of the that was one of the most awful things. I remember watching footage of people, going in and rescuing animals, like
right.
coming wandering out of the inflamed forest, and it was just heartbreaking. It's just
Mm.
dreadful. But what a theme for them to be turning up like that all the time. And
Yeah, throughout.
the mention of
Yeah.
delay, we were hoping to have Daniel with us today to have a chat. So and sadly, so Daniel Noah,
Yeah.
because of course, Rabbit Trap was produced by SpectreVision. I mean, that must have been great to work with SpectreVision because they really
Yeah.
understand this too. They're really keen. They're really
Yeah.
into this. That must have been great for you.
Have you had Daniel on the podcast before?
I have. Well, only because he came on to speak to the Patreon crew
Okay.
some months ago and ended up talking about his own experiences, strange,
Mm.
extraordinary experiences. Um, and that was brilliant because, yeah, it was a really rich conversation that we all had, and loads of the crew had questions they wanted to ask him. So it was very sort of back and forth, and yeah, a really great discussion. So,
Great.
and he's going to come on at some point too. We must organise that. Obviously, it was going to be today,
Yeah.
and so we'll just have another excuse to have a chat to him another time because
Yeah.
it's always really great to speak to him. But how
Yeah, he's
how did
great.
it come about that you were working together then?
Um, yeah, it was a great experience working with SpectreVision. I mean, those guys, it was very cool to have a producer on the film who, on one hand, understood what the film was, what kind of film I wanted to make, which is a very particular kind of film. It's got a
Yeah.
certain kind of sensibility that is definitely not to everyone's liking. But he got that. At the same time, he's an experiencer and is someone who's just got a rabid curiosity for people's experiences. So it was really it helped while we were tweaking the story and the script, because he would give feedback and notes, and we'd dig through it and try to improve the story, and
Cool.
where we could talk about fairies, and he wasn't like sitting back cynically going, "Yeah, but how does that serve the story?"
Yeah.
He'd ask, like, "Well, what's real? What really happens? Or what does that mean?"
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and we really felt that we were trying to make a film that would do ju like this might sound silly, but we wanted to make a film that the fair folk would be proud of,
Yeah.
that they would see themselves identified. And he told me once that I think it was a dream he had or a psychic. Yes, he went to go see a psychic, and she said to him, like the beings, they're happy, like they feel like the films you're making are doing them justice. Like, and that's become part of his mission, I think, with the production company is
Mm.
make films about the supernatural, but which don't treat it like it's some game
That,
or it's some just malevolent invasive force, but instead to treat it as a part of what it means to be a human in this world and what it means to be natural. Um,
yeah.
so so that was on one element that was great, and I didn't know that about him or the company when I first reached out to them. I'd just seen a few of their films,
Mm.
and particularly their film Mandy was just as a movie struck me so strongly. And I thought whoever made that, they clearly trust their filmmakers and are willing to go to some strange places. So I really would love them to read Rabbit Trap. And so it was a very circuitous, kind of difficult journey to get them to read the script because I was a
Mm.
I'd made short films, didn't have an agent, had no real contacts in the film industry. So it was through some really general, like some friends of friends and like that.
Mm.
Eventually got it to them, and then they just responded to it immediately. I got a text from Elijah going, "What, like it just said, like, what the fuck is this? Who is this guy? We got to meet." You know, they were fully in as soon as they read it because they thought this is
Yeah.
what we're looking for.
Yes. Oh God,
Yeah.
that's such a lovely success story as well. And
Mm,
yeah, it is hard, isn't it? Because you really want to do something that is this means something to you. I mean, it's like with what I'm doing, it means something to you. And if somebody doesn't get it, they don't get it. And that there's no point in trying to twist something that you're doing into something that's going to be digestible to someone else who doesn't get it, because it's not
yeah.
going to be the thing that needs to be made. And it sounds like, you know, as it seems to be with Daniel as well, that you're being called to do this. This is what I would think. This is the way that I see
Mm,
it, is that there's a sense of being called to do this
mm,
for whatever reason at this time, because I truly believe we are opening to these worlds, and what you're doing
mm,
with your film, what Daniel's doing with the platform, what I'm doing, it's kind of it's aiding others to be able to open to that too in all sorts of different ways. And so
mm,
yeah, I feel like it definitely found the right producers then with them. That's brilliant to hear.
mm,
And when you talked about wanting to have a sense that this was welcome, that this was being done in a way that was acceptable to these other realms, which is again how I work too.
mm.
Did you ever feel, how did that work when you introduced yourself to the landscape that you were working with? Did you have a sense of that you were being aided in any way by the landscape, or that you had a sense? I mean, I guess the hair is a biggie, right? That hair.
Potentially, it felt very meaningful on the ground, and it definitely put kind of the hairs on the back of our neck, pun not intended, up, and that definitely gave us a sense of excitement and focus. Um, I mean, it's odd. I find it quite place specific where I get a a feeling in the blood, like I get it in certain woodlands and I don't in others, and I can't explain it. And there are certain woods where I wrote the movie because I mean, obviously I sit at the computer and I write the movie, but there are sequences and character decisions and so on that I do while walking and thinking. And so I would go through particular woodlands where I'd be living at different times. And I would be drawn more towards woodlands where I'd feel a little bit watched or a little bit something. And I'm not unsettled because that I would turn around quickly. Um, but on a person, yeah, for me personally, I'm sort of looking for those spaces. On the shoot, I mean, all I can suggest that we were absolutely blessed with the weather because it was a 4 week shoot, and the first 2 weeks were mostly outdoors, and then the second 2 weeks were indoors. And those first 2 weeks we got clear skies, some like overcast, but it didn't rain.
Mm.
And then the second 2 weeks was an absolute deluge. Like the set was flooding, mud everywhere. But like, thankfully, we were indoors by that point. So if it had been the other way around, we wouldn't have finished the movie. It would have been kind of delayed, and then budget would have blown out. Who knows what would have happened? But we really felt very looked after, in terms of the weather, at least,
Mm.
which was the camera department was thrilled.
The weather
Um,
was with you.
it felt like that sometimes. And we just try to always be very, very respectful wherever we go. I mean, whenever I'm in the woods, I don't trample, and I look out for things, and I sort of quietly to myself, say thank you or apologize for if I accidentally crush something. And on set, we were very mindful of not hurting the landscape that we were shooting in, you know, um, regardless whether that's for the sake of the fair folk or if it's just for being respectful of the land you're shooting on.
Yeah,
Like you should
yeah.
do it. Um,
It's
yeah.
hopefully sets a kind of precedence because it does like it feels there's a quality to your film that feels different to other films. And I think it's because
Okay.
the sensitivity not only towards the subject, but there's a real kind of honesty in what you're trying to portray, as I say, with the kind of the spaciousness. And so I think you come away with the sense that you've had an experience by watching the film,
Hmm.
rather than you've had something kind of placed upon you. It's more like you have
Hmm.
you've had an experience, and so
Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that because that was as a filmmaker that was a decision. So I mean,
yeah.
almost every film that deals with fairies or goblins or any kind of known supernatural
Mhm.
entity, there's always a moment where the characters who are being kind of accosted or kind of confronted with these forces, at some point they go to a library or something and they pull a book off the shelf and then they go, oh, it turns out fairies, you shouldn't give them milk, and then they explain what's happening, and then the rest of it plays out. That way, the audience knows what's going on. And we consciously decided not to do that. That this was going to be a film where the two main characters are being confronted with forces that they don't have a context for. It's beyond their comprehension. Um, and so it should also be beyond our comprehension as an audience, unless you've got some prior knowledge of Welsh fairy lore. Because and the hope is that if people are open to it, then the experience of that interaction is enough. You don't have to have it taught to you. You
Yeah.
don't have to have it explained, like you said, put upon you. You
Mhm.
should ideally go on the ride or go on the experience with the characters. And that was a conscious decision all the way along. And it was one I had to fight with and kind of balance at every stage of the production, from writing to the shooting to the editing, um, all the way through to like, the poster and the trailer and the way we talk about the film.
Mhm.
And it's definitely hasn't been to everyone's liking, and it won't be to everyone's liking. And not even everyone on the team would agree, that this was the right way to do it. Exposition is always a debate on every movie, and especially if you're doing a movie that's kind of surreal or mysterious. Um, but for me, the principle behind it was I want this to be about the experience of dealing with spiritual forces.
Mhm.
And I think those forces are beyond rationality. So they should not be rationally thought away or explained away on screen, you know?
No,
So
definitely. And the thing is, when you're doing something differently, it takes people a while to catch up, right? So,
true.
I mean,
I hope they catch up in my lifetime. That would be nice, you know?
yeah,
That'd be really nice.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's really nice when you say you actually genuinely felt moved by the movie to the point where you wanted to watch it again to
Mm.
get more details or just to share it with your husband. Um,
I
that's
enjoyed it
that's
even more.
beautiful.
Actually, the second time I watched it, I enjoyed it even more than I did the first time. Um, and do you know the performance by particularly Jade Crute, who is this kind of otherworldly being?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Heck, I mean,
She's
wow.
absolutely amazing. Yeah. So Jade Crew is plays the nameless, ageless, genderless, possibly speciesless child at the heart of the film. Um, yeah, she's amazing. I mean, we went through a long casting process. I mean, I wrote the film for a boy of about 14.
Mhm.
I wanted it to be a boy because, without too many giving too much away, but there's this kind of semi-feral or possibly local child who it kind of ingratiates himself into Daphne and Darcy's lives, and this child clearly has some sort of connection to the fairy forces that are also bothering them. And it didn't make, particularly in the 70s, our characters, if it was a little girl running around the countryside, they would have been like, no, 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 we're taking you home. Like, you cannot be left to wander the moors at night, you know. But if it's a 14-year-old boy who's a country kid, they'd let it slide, you know. So there was a practical reason to write it as a boy. But then casting was quite difficult. You know, we auditioned easily 100 kids, and kids of all genders, uh, and ended up landing on Jade when she came in right at the end. I mean, she was 25 when we shot the film. She's a 25-year-old woman
Mhm.
playing ostensibly a 14-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Um, she just had such an emotional range that she could just tap into. She could be really vulnerable and sweet, and then easily switch into a kind of a cold Hannibal Lecter kind of tone. I mean, her favorite actor is Anthony Hopkins. Her favorite performance is Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. So, like on set, we'd have a little shorthand. She'd be like, Bryn, how Anthony Hopkins would you like me to get for this take? I'm like, let's go full Lecter. Oh, I've got you, brother. I've got you. You know, she's this funny little,
Mhm.
very kind of grounded, fun little Welsh lass, you know. And then she can just inhabit quite strange, quite strange characters. You know, she was great. I'm really excited for people to see this, like to see her to see her performance and just to go on the ride with her. Because I think what she did is really the heart of the film.
Absolutely. And, we can't forget to mention, obviously, Dev Patel and
Yeah.
Rosy McEwen as well. And oh my goodness, I mean, that was a treat. Dev Patel is
Yeah.
looking splendid. And
Yeah.
um,
He does look splendid. The man looks splendid.
Rosy McEwen is just fantastic in it too. So
Yeah.
it's just such a treat for the eyes and from the landscape shots, to the actors involved, and of course the soundscape, because this, the story is focused on, these artists that are playing with analog sound technology. You can explain that in a minute better than me. But it's an audio treat as well. I watched it first of all. I watched it on my laptop, and then
Mm,
when I listened with my husband when we had it
mm.
into the TV in the lounge, yeah, it was just incredible.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that, please? Because that's a
Yeah, sure.
it's your
Yeah,
heart.
I mean, I'm glad you got to that because that was a huge part of the film is making this an auditory experience. I mean, I interact with the world a lot through sound. I'm very sensitive to certain sounds and something that's just a big part of my life. And when I was researching Welsh fairy lore, music and sound just kept coming up over and over again. There's a kind of a particularity of Welsh fairies that of music and sound, like non-language based sound being so important to them. And I thought it's interesting even that your podcast is called Modern Fairy Sightings, you know, because the movie is kind of about a fairy hearing,
Mm,
you know, what it means to hear the other side. Because I think sound is so spectral. It's like sound is already evidence of a like a non-physical world. You know, it's the spectral world that we deal with every day in normal life, you know. A sound will come in from next door, it'll drift in and it'll go into your body and affect how you're feeling long before you figured out, oh, there's a broken air conditioner next door. You know,
mm,
you go, why do I feel gross? Oh, it's because um, there's a strange hum coming from the refrigerator, you
Mm.
know, or you go into the woods and you think you've heard a voice, and now what? You know, and it can drive you mad trying to figure out if the voice you've heard is your mind playing tricks on you, or if it's actually, the bird has spoken language for once or something, So anyway, the actual sound design of the film was obviously a huge part
Yeah.
because these are musicians and sound recordists who are led into the fairy realm through sound, and it's through sound that sound as a vibration event that actually unlocks a psychedelic experience that brings about most of the film.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
very sidestepping spoilers here.
Yeah, I thought that was, yeah,
Um,
spot on.
and we just put our sound designer Graham. I lived with him for a while in LA while he was working on it. He worked on it for months. Like every single shot has been meticulously constructed sound wise to create a feeling of the other realm creeping in and manipulating reality, and like it's just a beautiful sonic experience. So I'm really glad you got to watch it with some speakers on,
Mm.
and headphones is also great.
And the psychedelic aspect of it, we won't talk about how it unfolds, but yeah, it's I mean I'm looking forward to watching it a third time. I'll probably watch it with my son or my daughter actually,
Cool.
because I think that they would really appreciate it too. And is it so the release is going to be it's in America on the 12th of September, but what about the
Yes.
UK?
I would love to know. I don't know yet. I
I
mean,
can't find that information anywhere. So yeah.
well, because it hasn't been decided. I mean,
Okay.
this was always intended as a very small niche movie. It just along the way got slightly bigger and bigger. We managed to get, like you said, Dev Patel signed on
Yeah,
quite just
amazing.
before, like after I'd written it, after it was financed. I sent the script to him through his agent as a bit of a long shot, and then it turns out he loved it and came on board that day. So um, what was my point that this was always meant to be a small movie, and it's kind of a miracle that we got into Sundance earlier this year, and it's another miracle that we sold the film and it's going to get any theatrical release. So it's getting a short run in the US. I think it's 100 screens for 2 weeks,
Hmm.
which is great.
Wow.
And then hope we have sold it around the world. But we're just waiting to find out what that plan is.
Mhm.
Maybe it depends on how the US release goes. So if you have any US listeners, please go and watch the movie because it might actually help. If it does okay, then it might help us get to release it in the UK and overseas. I've
No.
always thought this was a movie that would play the best for British and European and Japanese audiences, I think, actually.
Yeah, I
And,
went.
and, and any cultures who are a bit more connected to their kind of fairy folk, the little ones. So I really hope it plays in the UK.
I do too, and I know that when so Wendy in my group, she's going along to the release in LA. She lives in LA,
Cool.
which I believe is next Friday.
Mhm.
So she's really excited about that, and I only wish that more of us could be there for that. But whereabouts else in the US for watchers and listeners? Because I'm going to release this. We're talking today, which is Friday, and it releases a week today. So
Yeah,
I'm going to get this out as soon as possible, so folks will have time to go and catch it. Do you know of any
great.
places it's being screened?
Other than LA and New York, I don't know. I don't know,
Okay.
sorry. I'm
Well,
not privy to that information.
that's fine. If we can find out
We
the
can find out.
information,
We can find out.
I'll put it on the show notes so that people can check out if there's a showing near them. And I've got to ask, what's next? Are you done?
I'm writing now. I mean, I'm writing the next couple of projects. I'm writing a few things at once. And I'm continuing along the lines of doing grounded kind of journeys across the veil.
Okay.
That's possible to be grounded and going across the veil, but I want to keep exploring myth and folklore, in a way that feels earthy and psychologically linked. So
Yeah.
hopefully I'll get another movie made at some point in my life. I would like it to be in the next couple of years. Um, that's what I'm doing next.
Yeah, I really hope so too. And I salute you. Congratulations on the
Thanks.
film Rabbit Trap is an absolute triumph.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear, what others think too when they go and see it. So, yeah, it'd be nice to welcome you back for your next film too. And
I'll
yeah,
be here.
all the
Yeah,
best
cool.
with how things unfurl from here on in. And it's been really great to talk to you as well.
It has been great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks. Thanks so much for listening and watching. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider joining us on Patreon for dozens more episodes of unreleased bonus content, monthly online events, and a private chat. We are a warm, supportive community and it really helps to support the project. Find us on patreon.com/The Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast.
SpectreVision Radio.